O tira tēnā tātou, nau piri mai, nau kake mai, whakatau mai rā tēnei o ngā wānanga. Kia ora everyone. Today in our session we have joining us Dr. Emalani Case. She is a senior lecturer in Pacific Studies at the University of Auckland. She is a writer, teacher, and Aloha Āina, deeply engaged in issues of Indigenous rights and representation, colonialism and decolonization, and environmental and social justice. She is from Waimea, Hawaii. This workshop will focus on the concept of hope, and more specifically, radical hope, as an essential part of well-being in Indigenous contexts. When we might return from the many battles we face, how do we maintain hope? How do we maintain hope in a future that we may not see in ourselves? How is this hope essential for our own well-being and for the well-being of generations to come? What keeps us in the fight? This workshop will discuss radical hope as a concept and embodying the concept in chant. Coming from Hawaii, Emalani will teach a chant that has been instrumental in social, political, and cultural movements that speaks to an intergenerational practice of hope as an expression of love for the future. Chanting, while not including large physical movement, is about internal movements, reawakening and re-energizing all that we need to continue the fight from inside out. E iho ana o luna, e pi'i ana o lalo. What is above shall fall, what is below shall rise. E mihi ana kia tātou, e te tuahine e ka tuku te rākau kia aku e Malani. Kia ora.
Kia ora, ngā mihi for your introduction. Ke aloha nui a kākou. He leo mahalo ke ia oko, no ke kono ana mai ke, no, ka hele ana mai ke ia hui, no ke kono ana ia ue hele mai ka ana me oko I ke ala. I just wanted to say thank you first of all for the opportunity to be here, for the invitation to share, and for the chance that we get to share space today. Even though we're virtual, we can still share space and talk about cool and important things. So just a big mahalo, a big thank you to all of you for coming. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more thoroughly later. But before I do that, I'm just going to share my screen because I do have some slides. And can you all see this? Okay, cool. Yeah. So I just wanted to speak quickly to this theme and how I came to it and why I think it's important. E ku in Hawaiian, I'm from Hawaii, as you would have heard in the bio in the intro. E ku means to stand, literally. And I added on the hope part because I think hope is an essential part of all of the work that we do, whatever space you're in, if you are working with or for or because of Indigenous peoples, you have to have hope. I find it as an essential element and a responsibility. So I'm going to be speaking to that today. I was reflecting on the theme of this hui, he wawai taumaha he kirimaku. And personally, when I think about the times that I feel heavy, overwhelmed, perhaps a bit down with the mahi that I'm doing, what keeps me going is a sense of radical hope. And I'm going to explain what that concept means. I mean, we all know what hope means. We all experience hope. But what does radical hope mean? That's what I'll get into. But I said here, when our feet are heavy, our skin wet, and when we are carrying the weight of generations, because let's face it, as Indigenous people, we are often carrying the weight of generations, people's past, people's present, people's in the future. What do we need to keep going? And we often need that sense of hope. So I did say I was going to introduce myself to you a bit more thoroughly because I think it's important that you know who you're sitting with. And what even brings me into this space. Why am I even here in Aotearoa? I'm not going to give you my whole life story, but I will tell you a little bit I am a senior lecturer in Pacific Studies at the University of Auckland, but I don't think that's the important part of me that brings me to this space. Outside of the university, I'm what we call in Hawaii an Aloha Āina. And aloha, I think, is one of the most abused words in the Hawaiian vocabulary. It means love. It also is the way we greet people and say goodbye. But when coupled with the word aina, which is our word for whenua, aloha aina means to love your place. And it means to love it fiercely. It means to protect it at all costs. It means to protect whenua, to protect aina, and to protect the ability of our future generations to know themselves on aina, on whenua, the way that we do, the way that our ancestors did as well. So that's a concept that comes with me from Hawaii, but that also informs my work here. I live and work in Tamaki Makaurau. You can see here in the bottom left-hand corner, this is my ohana, my family at home in Hawaii. But the top left-hand corner, this is part of my whānau here in Aotearoa that I'm blessed to be part of. You see me and my two babies in Hawaii. The picture below that is my partner and my beautiful stepkids in Hawaii as well. And on the other side, you've got pictures that just demonstrate Aloha Āina in action. So as I often say to my students here in Pacific Studies, I'm an activist and I'm unapologetic about that. And when I walk into the classroom, I tell them I have really strong positions about colonial power and militarism and settler colonialism, and I don't hide that. I think when we walk into spaces, we owe it to the people we're walking with and sharing with to be completely upfront about who we are. I don't call myself American. Hawaii is under the illegal occupation of the United States, and so I resist that. I'm a Kanaka Maoli. I'm Hawaiian. I'm against the U.S. Occupation of Hawaii, the militarism and the militarization of our islands, and I challenge settler colonialism here as well in Aotearoa, and I think that's my responsibility as somebody who's Indigenous, but not Indigenous to this whenua. Why I'm sharing all of this, though, is not at all to pat myself on the back because we do this work, but we fall and fail often. We're all on a learning journey to be the best Indigenous people we can be. But why I'm sharing all of this is because I found in my own life that my work deals with a lot of heavy stuff. Hawaii is one of the most heavily militarized places in the Pacific region. And what does that mean? It means that my islands have been turned into military training sites for the United States. And my work is often centered on issues of militarism. And when you are facing the United States military, one of the biggest powers in the world, that's overwhelming. That leads to burnout. That leads to overwhelm. That leads to just every emotion, every heavy emotion that you could possibly imagine. And so my purpose in this talk today is to talk about what keeps me going and what I have found with my students and with the activists I work with, what also keeps many of us going. And so just putting it out there to whatever space you're working in, whether you are in education or in health, obviously with Toi Tangata and health and well-being, whether you're encouraging spaces for cultural expression and art, and wherever you are, when it gets heavy, what keeps us going is that sense of hope. Yeah, I was going to go on a slight digression, but I won't. Maybe I'll come back to that later. So how I came to the concept of radical hope, which again, I will explain a little bit more later, is back in 2018, I was at home in Hawaii teaching Pacific Studies. And I had spent the semester exposing to my students and talking with my students about some of the heaviest issues in the region. Climate change, of course, ongoing colonialism, nuclear imperialism in places like the Marshall Islands, where some of our islands in Micronesia were used as bombing targets. What happens when colonialism affects our languages, our cultures, our abilities to really give to future generations the best possible chance to be thriving Indigenous people. What happens when those things are disrupted? And at the end of the semester, I brought all of my students together to reflect on what we had learned. And one of them said this to me. It takes a lot of energy to care about things I cannot change. And she went on to explain how she thought it was unfair of me to have exposed them to so much without really having any of the tools to get through that. And it was a real blow to me. I thanked her afterward, and I've thought about her so often since, but it was a blow to me as a teacher because I thought, wow, I left her feeling hopeless in my effort to say, this is all the stuff we got to deal with. It was like I took her to the battle, but I didn't give her any of the tools to replenish, to re-energize, to feel hopeful when facing so much. So it became my mission after that to change the way that I teach, to even change the way that I do research, to change the way that I speak in public spaces, to always forefront hope, to always lead with that, and to always, while addressing the heavy stuff, also take time to celebrate just how incredible we are as Indigenous people. I mean, I had a professor years ago who said, the fact that you are still here means that you are the descendant of the strong. So many people upon Western contact died with introduced diseases, with rapid change, and we are still here. You, me, as Indigenous people, we're still here in the region and we are still here in our places, insisting on our right to be who we are. And that says something about who our ancestors were, who we are, and who our descendants will be. So, with that said, I now centralize this concept, and it has become instrumental again in my own life, in the work that I do, in the teaching that I do. And it's often a concept that I share in spaces that I speak into because it's something that people can take away with them. I borrow the word radical hope and the concept radical hope from a man named Jonathan Lear, who did a lot of work with Native Americans in Turtle Island, North America. And he says radical hope, quote, is directed toward a future goodness that transcends the current ability to understand what it is. What that means is while we're kind of stuck in the thick of it, while we're still like, oh my gosh, I was just looking at the news, this current government, everything that keeps all the assaults against us and who we are. While you're in the thick of it, radical hope is the sense that you still maintain something better is going to come after this. There's a future goodness, even if right now everything in your everyday reality tells you that having hope in future goodness is perhaps foolish. It's when you don't really know perhaps what that future good will be, but you're going to hope in it anyway. And that's what makes hope radical. So as he continues, radical hope is committed to the bare idea that something good will emerge, even if you don't know what that something good will be. And very importantly, even if you don't get to experience that something better or that something good yourself. So as I said earlier, I consider myself to be an Aloha Āina. My identity is Kanaka Maoli. It is not American. I hope every day for a free and independent Hawaii that is free of US occupation and imperialism. Will I get to see that in my lifetime? Probably not. But I'm going to hope for it anyway. And more importantly, I'm not only going to hope, but I'm going to try to do the work in the present to prepare that possibility for the future, even if I don't see it. And that's what radical hope is grounded in. It's why you show up to spaces like this. It's why we have these kinds of hui, so that we can come together, share our experiences, perhaps share our shared struggles as well, but also unite in our hope for better futures. One more quote I want to share with you comes from an absolute hero in Hawaii, a Kanaka Maoli activist and Aloha Āina named George Helm, who was instrumental in the 1970s in a movement to really reawaken Hawaiians and bring them back into a political awareness and a cultural awareness of themselves and their situation. If you know anything about Hawaii, you might know that one of our islands, Kaho'olawe, was used as a bombing target for the United States military, and he was instrumental in helping that to stop. And he actually put his body on the line and went to the island to put his body between land or Whenua and Aina and bombs. And that kind of bravery is just beyond what I can even understand in my own body. But he said, and I think this speaks to the concept of radical hope, he said, call me radical, for I refuse to remain idle. He maintained that doing something, whatever it is better than doing nothing. Even again, if you're working towards something that you won't get to see yourself. And he died, unfortunately, in the movement before he could see Kaho'olawe freed from that bombing. So I know these are like really extreme examples, but you can take these concepts and you can take these quotes and apply them to your daily life and whatever mahi you're doing. Why do you keep going? Why do you keep moving? Why do you keep creating spaces like this? Why do we keep speaking, chanting, singing, dancing, choreographing, creating? Why do we do it? Because it's something, and it's something for the future. So what I really wanted to do today, because these, the intention was to have these be interactive sessions, and I didn't want to talk at you for a whole hour, is I wanted to teach you a chant. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about this chant and why I love it so much and why I find it really important and what chanting also means to me. But so this chant comes from a really old prophecy by a man named Kapihe. And in the early 1800s, he uttered this prophecy in front of Kamehameha I. In Hawaii, Kamehameha I is quite a famous figure. He's known for unifying all of the different Hawaiian islands and separate chiefdoms under one rule. Side note, if you've watched Chief of War, produced and featuring Jason Momoa, he's one of the people in that show. So Kapihe utters this in front of him. And if you look at analysis, different analyses and readings of the prophecy, people think he may have been trying to prophesize the fall of Kamehameha. That'll make sense once I translate this for you. But the point is that this prophecy, once it was uttered, then made its way into so many different conversations over time and so many different debates about the future of Hawaii that it stuck. And we continue to chant it today. And the reason we continue to chant it today is because it speaks very, very simply, but quite profoundly, to change, and to the possibility that change, radical change even, is always possible. So I didn't include the English on the slide, but I'll translate it quickly for you. E iho ana o luna basically means whatever is up can and shall come down. E pi'i ana o lalo, whatever is down, whoever is down, can or shall come up and rise. E hui ana na moku, the islands will unite. E ku ana kapaya, and the walls will stand. The last line is a line that contemporarily people change depending on the context. It's asking for life or for energy into whatever space you want to put energy into. So I've just quite simply said, e ola na iwi. And I'm realizing now that looks like iwi to you in Hawaiian. We sometimes pronounce the W as a V. Iwi for us means bones. And when you say ola na iwi, you're saying that the family, that the generations, the literal bones of us will live. So as you can see, it's quite simple in its structure and simple in its wording. But if you can think about all those people or perhaps entities in positions of power that are oppressive or perhaps not doing anything of benefit for Indigenous people, when you think about them falling and you think about those of us who have experienced marginalization and colonization rising, you get hope from that. And so this chant is done all over Hawaii. It's done all the time. It's done in protest movements. It's done in classrooms. The school I graduated from in Hawaii, we chanted this at the end of every single day. We ended every single day with this. And it took me a while to realize that it is one of the most hopeful chants out there because it keeps you going. Because even while you're in the thick of it, you think reversal and radical change is always possible. And that's what this is speaking to. So I'm going to teach this to you. Before I do that, though, I want to say this is my mountain back home in Hawaii. This is Mauna Kea. And if you're familiar with Mauna Kea at all or familiar with Hawaii, you might know about the effort to protect Mauna Kea from destruction and desecration. And in 2019, right around the time that eviction notices were handed to Kaitiaki at Ihumātao, Kia'i or protectors were stationed at the base of Mauna Kea in Hawaii. And this is a photo that I took from one of the hillsides on the side of the base. And why I'm bringing in this photo is because that chant, E Hoana Oluna, was chanted every single day on this long roadway. This is the only access road to get to the summit of the mountain where a controversial 30-meter telescope was proposed to be built. And that's what we're standing against. This is a slight digression, but that telescope has never been built, and I maintain will never be built because of Indigenous strength and Indigenous persistence and resistance and Aloha Āina, the knowing that we protect our places fiercely for us and for future generations to come. But that chant, again, was so instrumental in this movement. And I just wanted to demonstrate how Kanaka Hawaiians at home, and not just Hawaiians, people who are allies, who stand in solidarity with us, find hope in that chant and find motivation in it to keep going in their movements. So I think I've already covered all of this, but Eihua o Luna really teaches us that a reversal, an upheaval, a radical shift is always possible on the biggest levels and even on the smaller ones. What or who is above can certainly fall, and what or who is below can always rise. And it is a call to be here for the rise, to be part of it, and to be part of helping it happen. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take you through some chanting exercises. Now, I know Zoom can be kind of weird for that, so I'm going to maybe ask you to keep your selves on mute, because when you got a whole bunch of voices trying to chant at the same time, it's echoey and everyone's, yeah. So I'm going to just trust that you're on the other side chanting with me. Now, why I love chanting, I started dancing hula before I even went to school. And so it's always been part of my life. And while the physical movement of hula is really important, of equal importance is chanting. You dance to sung or chanted stories. And so chanting is really an essential part of hula. And because we're not in person and I can't teach you a physical hula or a dance, I'm going to teach you a chant. And I love chanting because for me, it's about warming you up from the inside. It's about re-energizing. It's about reawakening. It's about tapping into something inside of you that is ancestral and ancient, but also new as you utter it every single day. So it's not about large physical movement. And I know one of the themes of this Hui is movements, but it's about the small ones. It's about the ones that shake you on the inside in really productive and beautiful and spiritual ways. So what I wanted to do to start was just take you through a chanting warm-up exercise using the vowels. We have the same vowels. These are the same vowels used in so many places in the Pacific. So while we're not chanting words to warm up, I often tell people when I use this exercise that we are using some of our regional sounds. These are our vowels in the Pacific region, including Aotearoa. These are our sounds, and they're grounding, right? Our languages are built around these sounds. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to chant these vowels with me. We'll do all of them. A, E, I, O, U, without breathing. Without taking a breath, sorry. Without taking a breath. And we're going to use what is called Ii. Now, in Hawaii, Ii is like a really heavy vibrato. And I can hear that when people do karanga here as well. You can hear that shake, that quiver. And it means that I'm not just going to go A, E, I, O, U, but I'm going to add in an Ii to really shake everything. I'm going to feel it in my guts. I'm going to feel it in my limbs, in my voice, in my throat. So instead, I'm going to go, and I can feel it. And I'm centering in our sounds, and I'm centering in our quiver, and I'm centering and I'm feeling it on the inside. So that's what I want you to do with me in your own space, as loud as you want, or as quiet as you want, as intimate as you want, you choose. We're going to do that 3 times. Hold it as long as you can. Feel it where you can feel it. You want to turn off your camera, do that. You want to stand up, do whatever you need to do. We'll start a little bit low and we'll go a little bit higher each time. We'll just do it 3 times and just feel it. Just sit with it. Take it slow, breathe, warm yourself up from the inside. And for me, I chant all the time. I chant in the car. I chant in the shower. I chant just to feel like I'm home. I chant to be connected. And I chant to also connect back to me and myself and to be aware of my body. And I feel like that is an essential part of Indigenous well-being and health, right? Is tapping into this ancestral practice, this ancient practice that helps us to really just center and ground in us. Close your eyes if you want to, do whatever you want. Yeah, and just follow along. So we'll start a little bit lower and then we'll modulate up. All right. Hold on to that. You can hold on to that practice if you want. Again, I use it all the time, actually. It's not words, but I sometimes find that even more powerful. It's just the sound. And again, as I often tell my Maori and Pacific students who I do chanting with here sometimes, those are our sounds. We get to own that. All right, so I'm going to teach you this chant. And I purposefully chose this one for everything that it means and how much I love it, but also because it's simple. So we'll do the first 4 lines 3 times. That's how it's done in Hawaii. And then we'll do the last line once to tie it up, to close it with our hope that all of our iwi, and I did also use iwi purposefully for iwi for you and iwi for us, will live, will thrive, will prosper. So this is what it sounds like. It doesn't use as much EE. I use the EE exercise to get you to kind of warm everything up, but this chant is actually not chanted with as much EE. It sounds like this. E iho ana o luna e pi'i ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana kapaya. E iho ana o luna e pi'i ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana kapaya. E iho ana o luna e pi'i ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana kapaya. E ola na iwi. So that's what it sounds like. And you hear the emphasis on ku, which is why I named my session E Ku, because ku means to stand. It means to be solid, not just the actual physical act of standing every day, which we do every day, but it means to be solid. It means to be pa. It means to be secure. And when you're talking about the strength and the determination and the motivation it needs, or we need, to persevere, to persist, to be Indigenous, to call for radical change, that ku has to be strong. So we'll do it. Do I need to go through pronunciation wise? Anyone want to give me a thumbs up, or should we just try it?
Sounds like Kupu Maori. I think we'll be good.
Cool. That was sort of what I thought, is that the only difference is, I think, is that we have the L. We often have actually, there's no word in here where we have a K, where you might have a T. But like many of our words are similar. So Luna, Lalo, similar for you. Some of the words are even the same, but might different meaning. Like hui for us is an actual hui, like this, like a gathering, but it also means to come, together, which I guess is the same there as well. So let's just try it. I'll do it slowly. Try it with me. Of course, because I can't hear you, I don't know if you're actually doing it on the other side, but I'm just going to hope that you're doing it on the other side. Feel it, feel it. And then again, as you're chanting, really think about what you're chanting. This was an old prophecy, but it's been given so much new life over time. And because it's been woven into so many of our Indigenous resistance movements, it's got a lot of mana. So we'll try that again. I'll go a little bit slower and just do it with me. Just practice the words, get your mouth around the sounds and the vowels. Okay? And I'll start. Oh yeah. E iho ana o luna e pi'i ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana kapaya. E iho ana o luna e pi'i ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana ka paia. E iho ana o luna e pi'i ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana ka paia. E ola na iwi. How was that? Oops, I'll go back. Sorry, I accidentally clicked. Sound good? Pat yourself on the back. I know you all sounded amazing. So that was a little bit slow. It's usually a little bit faster than that. So we'll do it one more time, a little bit faster. And then I might pause just to see if anybody has any questions. And then we can move on. But we'll do it again before we close officially at the end. All right. E iho ana o luna e pi'i ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana ka paia. E iho ana o luna e pi'i ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana ka paia. E iho ana o luna e pi'i ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana ka paia. E ola na iwi. How's that? Yeah, good. I see some thumbs up, some hearts, things like that. So hopefully that was good for you. I'm going to pause real quick just to see if anybody has any questions, any clarifications on the chant itself. And then I can continue.
Maybe before opening up the floor, Emalani, just mihi ana kia koe. We were actually blessed and lucky enough to have Whai Awhitia gift a taku yesterday to the wider network that was in attendance, and then shared a little bit around her journey around that. So the taku and the chant that you're talking and sharing with us is probably another taonga that everybody is able to take alongside with them. I guess there's a couple of parts. One that I had was in Aloha Hawaii. What is the actual kupu for the chanting?
Oh, for the act of chanting.
Aye.
Oh, oli, O-L-I.
Oli. Thank you. There's a couple of parts that sort of came through as well.
Oh, okay.
And the thing, so is ihi equivalent to ihi, like as in ihi rangaranga and the kupu Māori, or?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. I would love to say there's some overlap there and resonances, but I can't say for certain. Yeah. Good question. Sorry, was there another one? I haven't been keeping track of the.
Nā ke te pai, you're busy doing your things. Pa'a and kaha, is there alignment in those kupu?
Oh, perhaps. Yeah, again, one of those where you're not exactly sure, but I think because we find so many resonances and similarities, I mean, I don't think that those are all coincidental. We all come from the same place if you trace it back far enough. And that's what my partner is Maori, my babies are Kanaka Maoli and Maori. And so part of the blessing of living here has been learning about this place through their eyes and through their language as well, and you do find so many overlaps, and I hesitate to say that they're always the same, because I think there's something to be said for cultural specificity and really celebrating that, because our language is, even though we migrated to our different places, our language is really developed because of the places that we're in. So there's beauty in that specificity, but there's also so many overlaps and similarities, and yeah, that I think are also beautiful to celebrate. So I can't say for sure, but also my heart wants to say, yes, there's something there connected. Moana, Tilda, I see your question about the importance of i'i. For us, we have so many different chanting styles, and not all of them use that. And I know for me, in just the way that I was taught, it is about, it's just about the sound, really. It's a different sound that is older, that is showing a skill that is not just the way that we speak. Chanting was often used for prayer. So we would chant our prayers. We would enter into the environment by chanting. We would ask to enter spaces with chanting. Everything was done with chanting. For me, I think that I'i is what sets it apart from this. For our everyday conversation, for me, there's a kind of ceremonial aspect to it. There's something that's more intentional about it. I'm going to actually change the way that I'm doing things because this is what that deserves and requires. But as I said earlier, like I love I'i because of how it makes me feel. And I think there's some intention there as well. But that part's my own take. Yeah. It just feels old to me. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Let me know if you have any more. I just had a couple more slides because I think when we talk about hope, well, I'll say this first and then I'll get into the rest. But this is just a reminder that every time you do the chant, and please, please take it, use it. We share it quite openly. It's used in a lot of different spaces. And every time you do it, even if you just kind of use it and read it even, think about what it's calling for. It's calling for change, radical change. It's hoping that things will happen, that better will come, importantly, even if we don't live to see that. But very importantly, hope that doesn't also have action can actually lead to hopelessness. If you just hope so endlessly for something, but you're not doing the mahi, then it's not going to happen, right? So we got to do the work. We got to do the work at the end of that. And that's one of the lessons I often give my students. Like I used to, this is such an aside, but I had this great friend at home in Hawaii, and she'd be like, I always pray for this. I'm like, girl, you got to pray and do the mahi. You can't have a kua do everything for you. So that's my intention here is we can hope as much as we want, but there's got to be some action with that. So the chant is the start. It warms us, right? It prepares us. It helps us to maintain the motivation to be in the fight, but we got to do something. And part of that, and I'll come back to this, but part of that work has to do with what the incredible Linda Tuhiwai Smith calls envisioning, right? It's this ability to engage in a decolonial kind of dreaming. As Linda Tuhiwai Smith says, that asks people to imagine a future, that asks them to rise above the present and our everyday situations, which are often depressing, and dream a new dream and set a new vision. And then to act on that dream and to act on that vision. So when I started this workshop out, and I was talking about my student in Hawaii, after that, I became very intentional in all of my classes in incorporating some kind of envisioning practice. Sometimes I actually have my students like create art, write poetry, whatever, that lets them dream beyond today. Something I found over the years in my own work and in my own self is that even my dreams had been colonized. I didn't know how to dream beyond the present day situation, right? I didn't know how to dream beyond what I had been confronted with. And this became really apparent to me when in 2019, I was up at Ihumātao. I was doing a lecture or a talk there with the incredible Tina Ngata, who I love. And we were doing a talk on the doctrine of discovery. And we stood there on the Whenua, and she looked at me and she said, Emalani, what does a post-doctrine of discovery future look like for you? What wakes you up in the morning? And if you're not aware of the doctrine of discovery, please go and look up Tina's work. Just understand that it's a set of principles that came out of the Vatican and laws that enabled colonization. Basically said if you weren't Christian and you weren't white, you could be conquered. And that's why, on a side note, when people tell me that Cook was not a white supremacist, Captain James Cook I'm talking about, I tell them no, he was armed with the doctrine of discovery and he came out into the Pacific ready to conquer. That's an aside, because if you know anything about me, you know I talk about Cook all the time. So she looked at me and she asked me that question and said, what does a post-doctrine of discovery future look like? And very importantly, what wakes you up in the morning? And I remember standing there and I had a hard time with that question. Not because I didn't love the question, I loved it, but I didn't know how to answer. And I started to say things like, there's no racism, and we've decolonized and all of this stuff. And in that moment, I learned and I realized that I knew everything I was fighting against, not down to the detail what I was fighting for. And she said, Emalani, and she kind of paused and in her brilliant way said, no, like what wakes you up in the morning? What do you hear? Who's there? What time of day is it? What do you smell? What do you taste? And she wanted me, without saying it, to decolonize my dreamscape, to realize that I had the freedom to dream beyond just what I was facing, beyond what I was fighting against, to think about really radically and beautifully what was waking me up in the morning. My kids chanting, perhaps, greeting the sun or greeting the day in the ways that I teach them how to do it, in a place that is free and healthy and vibrant and flourishing. I'm still not that great at doing it, but I believe that envisioning and dreaming beyond the atrocities of the day, as Tuhiwai Smith says, which are generally depressing, is an everyday action that we have to get into. It's not about building fanciful dreams that are not realistic. It's about saying, this is actually what I envision, and this is my radical hope for the future. And I'm now going to do what I can in the current day, in my everyday mahi, to get toward that future. Again, even if I don't get to see it myself. So I had a couple of questions that I was just going to put out there, things that you can think about. I'll come back to this one, and then I'll go to those questions that I'll kind of close up with and leave you with, and that we can also talk about. But think about, I gave you one of our prophecies from Hawaii. And something to think about is, what are your own proverbs, your own prophecies, your own, hopes, ancestral hopes that come from your ancestors or come from the very recent past or come from you and your family? What keeps you going? What are the phrases, the songs that you sing, the chants that you do, the dances that you dance? What are your practices to center, ground, and nurture the inside? How do we keep ourselves grounded spiritually? How do we keep ourselves connected? Chanting is one practice for me. Hula is another. Aloha Āina is a big one for me. But what are yours? And then what are your radical hopes down to the detail? Beyond what you're fighting against, what you engage in battle against every day, what are you fighting for? And so to demonstrate something that I do with my students, I've done this with so many groups, is when I talked about having my students write poetry, I often take them through this really simple, but sometimes difficult exercise where I ask them to just fill in the blanks and then continue from there. In a future that is blank, what do you wake up to? And you could change the I to we, in a future that is full, in a future that is free, in a future that is, one woman I did this workshop with years ago said, in a future that is momona. And momona for us in Hawaii means fat, it means large, but in the best sense, not take away all of the colonial garbage that is associated with the word fat. It's like healthy, it's vibrant, it's full. She said, in a future that is fat, we wake up to, and then she went on and just explained what that future looks like. And it was beautiful. Another woman in another session said, in a future that is salty, like bringing it back to the ocean that's connecting all of us, the Pacific Ocean. What does that feel like? So I thought, and we actually still have a little bit of time, it might be good timing, that this could be kind of our closing, where I'm going to put that out there, and I'm going to invite you, if any of you want to, just give us some words. In a future that is what? Like, what would you put there? What would be a word that you use to describe the future? And what do you wake up to? So I'm going to pause and just kind of put that out there. Oh, in a future that is brown. Thank you. Anyone else?
Emalani, you okay if
Yes.
people want to unmute?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so whānau, if you feel the need to kōrero, then tuku.
Yeah. In fact, I'm sure we can remember in a future that is, I'll put it in the chat, but I kind of, because I can't see everybody. So I'm going to stop share for a second. And then if you want to unmute and just tell me, give me a word in a future that is, I'll just type that. Yeah. And if you oh, go ahead.
Flourishing is a word comes to mind. I love to, nurture a future where our tamariki can flourish, not only get by, not survive, but really feel. So based on that, I wake up every day thinking about what I can do with my mahi to empower them to feel that power so they can flourish.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. And yes, to doing more than just surviving. We've been doing that for a long time. Yeah.
Matu Kupu, I was thinking in a future that is prosperous, you wake up to harikoa. It's really hard for people to be happy in an environment that's not fostering that. And so I think that's kind of one thing that a lot of our whānau forget how to be happy. They are just trucking along with what day-to-day mahi looks like. And, as Māori and Indigenous, your obligations and responsibilities to your iwi, your hapu, your whānau, your workplace, all the others, we take that a lot more seriously than some others. They can just clock off at the end of the day and, go about whatever their business is. So I guess for me, it's that. It's seeing generations be happy together. And I think we're pretty fortunate within our whānau that we've had some trailblazers and Korowa and Kuia who've set a precedent for us to meet at least once a year minimum at our marae. And if the marae is taken, we go to the kura and there's some goals to achieve to learn waiata. So, you're kōrero about chants and all the other things. And, they've just had a working bee on the Sunday just gone, and the numbers were really good for our whānau to turn up there. But I think it's that. It's just really whānau being able to understand that it's okay to be happy and to step away from stressful environments or places where things can be deemed to, I guess, pull you away from that hope. That's where my whakaaro was as well. Those are the two kupu that I could think of. So I'm thinking of a kraua and a mokopuna just belly laughing, together.
Yeah, beautiful. No, thanks, Dario. I think joy sometimes, joy is the best resistance, If you think about Indigenous people who were meant to be disappeared from the earth through colonization and through actual tactics and logics of elimination, our joy is resistance, right? Our ability to keep laughing is beautiful in the face of everything else. And I'm often reminded that our kids need to see us do the work, but they also need to see us joyful and happy. And so, yeah, I love that. And there's a few amazing ones coming through. Moana, in a future that is queer, I wake up to belly deep laughter. That is awesome. Think about, where was I reading this? I think it was in Lana Lopesi's book, Bloody Woman, where she talks about Pacific women and their hyena laughs. And I was like, yeah, that's a good laugh. That's a good book, by the way, if anyone wants to read a good book. Tina, in a future that is thriving, we wake up to warmth, contentment, and laughter. Yes, with the laughter and the joy. We've got a good theme going here. In a future that is free to express oneself, I wake up to contentment. Yeah, that's profound and simple and beautiful. Joy activism, yes. In a future of acknowledged wealth, normalizing the matauranga of Indigenous being weaved in how we live holistically. Beautiful. In a future that is safe, I wake up to a world that cares about each other. In a future that is Maori, yes. In a future that is just, I wake up to jazz. Healthy, I wake up to whānau. Beautiful. And the purpose of this and why I do this in so many spaces, and I've been doing this for years now, is because in this space, now my dreams and your dreams are linked. And now I want what you want too. I want a queer future that has deep belly laughs, and I want a safe future I want a future that is just. I want to wake up to jazz too. I want to wake up to laughing kids. I want to wake up to a world where people care about each other. And so when you kind of collectively bring all of those together, it's doing some of the action and the work of e hui ana na moku e kuana kapaya, right? Of bringing people together. In the chant, it's literally about the islands being united and people being united and then having this kind of stronghold. But this is the same. And I know, I've had people say, oh, but Emalani, like dreaming and envisioning is kind of airy fairy work. And I'm like, well, it is, but it's also what we need to then continue doing the work. I have to know what I'm fighting for, not just what I'm fighting against. I have a jazz song as my morning alarm. Oh, that's cool. Very awesome. Anything else? I realized I didn't even give you my own words. It changes by the day, but how I'm feeling in this space right now, in a future. No, I can't even think of it. I feel too much pressure as I'm sitting here with you. I've just been writing this big research grant about a place called Pohakuloa in Hawaii, which is the site of one of the biggest military training facilities in Hawaii. And so it's heavy on my heart. It's heavy on my heart all the time. But yeah, I'd say in a future that is free, because occupation and militarism is been on my mind a lot. But in a future that is free, I wake up to silence. And I say silence, not in the sense that I don't want anyone to bother me, but Pohakuloa it's been literally bombed for decades. And the sound, the noise is painful. So there's a moment where I would love to just wake up to none of that. And the silence give the land time to heal, to breathe, to just be, and to have that one tiny moment before anything else happens. So maybe those will be my words for the day. Now starting to create strategic plans. Yes. And in a future that is changing, I wake up to embrace it. Beautiful. I might, we're running out of time, but I might, very, very early on, I paused after I introduced myself and I said, oh, I was going to go on a digression and I didn't. And I kept myself from doing that, but I'm going to do that now to give this a point and to show some action and to politicize the space because, hey, I'm all about politicizing and radicalizing every space you're in. Tomorrow in Hawaii, a huge exercise called RIMPAC is starting. RIMPAC stands for the Rim of the Pacific. It's a United States hosted war game, basically. It happens in Hawaii every 2 years. Starts tomorrow and will go until the 31st of July. And why I'm mentioning that is because New Zealand, and I'm really intentional in saying New Zealand and not Aotearoa, because I'm talking about the government and the settler state, is a participating nation. So every year since 2012, they have sent troops over to Hawaii to basically go to places like Pohakuloa and blow things up and practice war. Now, they are also participating with Israel, Indonesia, other Pacific nations, Fiji, Tonga. And I think there is this critical need for all of us to think about, and I'm not just concerned about RIMPAC because I'm from Hawaii and that's where they happen. But I feel like when we see the ways that our issues are really interconnected, right? Here you got our government participating with some genocidal regimes to practice war. That's something that we should be thinking about. And so I'm active in my stance against RIMPAC every other year. And that's part of me saying, do that, mahi, that sucks. Because it's hard and it's heavy. Because my dream for that freedom is real. And I want it for my kids and for my grandkids and for all of the babies of the region. So you got to do that hard stuff to be able to have that dream and to be able to see it happen, even if it's not me happening, even if it's me seeing it through my descendants. But yeah, I also thought I'd mention RIMPAC because it's happening. And it's part of that heavy work that we sometimes feel beaten down by, but that we have to do to have the dreams come true. So thank you for entertaining my political rant. And yeah. But we've got a couple of minutes left, so I propose we do that chant one more time. Feel it, and then if you got any other questions, you can ask me. If not, we can call it a day. Yeah, thank you. You know, just I'm looking at the comments. RIMPAC, as I said, I'll just give one. Sorry, I said I was going to stop, but I'll give you one more note. Like I don't talk about RIMPAC again just because it happens in Hawaii, but I think I talk about it instead because like I've gone to solidarity events for West Papua, for example, which is a place in the Pacific under the occupation of Indonesia, and I go into these spaces and I often end up being asked to talk about RIMPAC because it's an event that brings all of our nations together in this really complex, messy web of militarism and colonialism. And when we act together, when we hui na moku and bring all the islands in the region together to actually fight against something like that, it's not just the single event, it's the structure that we're resisting. Then something can happen from that, even if it's the beautiful solidarity that comes from it. But we'll go back to the chant because I don't want to leave you with yucky RIMPAC because RIMPAC already takes too much of my breath and time, and we'll go back to some ancestral wisdom instead. So I'll share it again so you have the words. Okay, and then we can close it up there. All right. Take a couple of deep breaths with me and then we'll get into it. So, hanui loko, take a deep breath in. Hanui waho, out. And one more time, hanui loko. And hanui waho. And then we'll end with this. E iho ana o luna e pi ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana kapaya. E iho ana o luna e pi ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana kapaya. E iho ana o luna e pi ana o lalo e hui ana na moku e ku ana kapaya. E ola na iwi. And with that, I will say mahalo nui a oko. Thank you to all of you for joining me today and for letting me be part of your hui. It's been an honor. And I always recognize that I'm not Maori and I'm not from here. And so, it's just always an honor to be in these spaces and to share what I can from my people and from my place in Hawaii. So aloha.